excited that Carla came. Dr. Carla, wow, the National Center for Home Food Preservation has an interest in what we do here. Yeah, I know, but for all of us who have dug into So Easy to Preserve, she's writing a new version.
You gotta talk in the mic, Ken. You gotta talk in
Oh,
the mic.
leave me alone with the mic. I can just scream, Mark. I'm like you. You don't need a mic. You ever use a mic? Okay. Anyway, I'm very happy that she can be here and talk to us. And before I give out any more secrets, I better let you come up.
All right, can you all hear me? Good morning, everyone. I like to move around, so if you cannot hear me because I'm moving too much, let me know and I'll stop. It's an absolute pleasure to be here this morning and to be invited for this conference. I really appreciate the invite, Ken, and the whole organizing committee. You guys have done such an amazing job putting all this together and bringing us all together with passion about food preservation and many other topics that go along with food preservation. And so today I'm going to be talking a little bit about some of the history, some might be just a review for you, and some what we are seeing, moving forward with new technologies, AI. Hint, I made this photo with AI because we're seeing a lot of AI playing in food preservation, which is exciting but also a little bit scary. So we're going to be talking about that. So as Ken already said, my name is Carla Schwan. I'm an assistant professor and extension food safety specialist at the University of Georgia, and I also serve as a director for the National Center for Home Food Preservation. Okay.
Well, it worked before.
It worked before, yeah. I have a lot of animation, so let's see if I can unplug and plug that again. Otherwise, we're going to be tired of moving things for me.
Well, no, I don't mind. I'm usually stuck here.
There you go. Perfect. Wonderful. And I don't know if you knew, but today is National Canning Day, so well planned, Ken. I think he was planning that along, so it's like perfect.
Well, they
theme.
all did it just for us, so.
Yeah, there you go. But they couldn't be here, so. Anyways, so for today's, where we're going to be connecting, and feel free to raise your hand or ask any questions at any time. This is a conversation, so you're welcome to share your ideas and your feedback as well. But I'm going to be going over the history or the foundation of home food preservation, and especially canning. There's so many different methods in home food preservation, but we're going to be focusing on canning today. Then some of the national trends that we are seeing with the National Center through the emails, and also our advisory board that is represented the whole country in different universities, extension systems, and also the industry, and how that has been evolving. Oops. Okay, just a little funky, but
You want me to go backwards?
no, it's okay. And then some of the innovation that we are seeing with some of the new things, especially after COVID, and how things have kind of shaped a little bit of food preservation and how that's moving forward. And then finally, I'm going to be sharing a little bit on the National Center for Home Preservation, some of the updates that we have done, and the capacity that we are building across the whole country, and how we can work together to advance food preservation in this area together. So, let's see. Oops. This is not, yeah.
Backwards or forwards?
There you go. Okay, there you go. So food preservation has been around forever, right? I think it's one of the first forms of preserving food when people were either in tropical areas that they were sun drying different grains, or they were freezing meats like seal in very cold climates. But specifically for canning, my timeline here, you're going to see starts in 1858, but we have seen things on canning before then, when Napoleon back then was giving a reward for somebody that could come up with a new food preservation method for the troops. Actually, when they would go to war, they could carry that food that would extend the shelf life, so they could feed the troops. And so Nicholas Appert is actually the one that invented canning, so the canning in cans and afterwards jars. But then the mason jar was invented by John Mason, and so it was patented in 1858. So you see that canning has been around forever. It's not a new method. It's a method that works very well, that is safe if you follow directions as tested, and so it has been here forever. Pass. Oh, there you go. So then the next time line here is 1914, where we had the World War I, where a lot of canning was done, and then the Smith-Lever Act, which is our extension, basically foundation of our extension service, where we see the home demonstration agents that were given an official position that back then to go to people's home and also help them and train them how do you preserve food at home. And so that started in 1914, and that's really the heart of what I do, having a very big appointment with extension. So providing bridging within university and the communities, bringing that information and training. There you go. Then 1917, USDA finally provided information and said that pressure canning is the only way that is safe for processing or preserving low acid foods. And when I say low acid foods, those are the foods that don't have enough acid naturally present in them. So your vegetables, your seafood, your meat, and other things as well. So pressure canning is the only safe way. In 1943, we see peak in home canning again in the United States. And keep in mind that during this time, we had the World War II. And at that time, they were producing more than 4 billion cans and jars for the troops to take with them when they were fighting during that time. So it makes sense that we had a peak in home canning then. Then in 1945, we see a decline in home canning, and that makes sense because then we had home refrigeration was invented back then. So a lot of people were relying in home refrigeration if they had access to. So we see that decline because of this new technology that was available for folks to use. Then in 1970, we see that do-yourself movement back again, and the peak in home canning again. So it kind of goes in waves, and you're going to see this until this day is the same thing. And the next thing you see, maybe.
You get 2 for 1.
It's okay. The next thing you see is then the largest botulism outbreak linked to home canning in 1977. We had over 40 people getting sick. Some folks died from a restaurant actually in Michigan that they had canned jalapenos at home, and they brought the jalapenos to the restaurant and they used that in a dish that they made. And unfortunately, the jalapeno is a low acid food, meaning you should have been processed in a pressure canner, but it was processed in a boiling water canner. And so botulism was the outcome of this outbreak. And then in 1988, the USDA came out with the complete guide to home canning, which is, we still have the home canning guide today. And in 1993, finally, the FDA published the first food code that was ever available. So kind of countering that, starting your food business at home, for example, cottage foods or whatnot, and then moving that to manufactured foods or into retail. So they had those comprehensive food code established afterwards.
I don't know why.
Sometimes it works, it's moody.
Yeah.
And then in 2000, the National Center for Home Food Preservation was established. And this was an effort that was done with University of Georgia and Alabama A&M universities together. And it was founded with USDA funding. So back then, they were able to establish the center, and we have been continuing since then. In 2005, the first national survey was conducted, and back then they found out that about 57% of consumers at home preserving food were using unsafe methods according to USDA guidelines, so increasing potentially the risk of botulism depending on the type of food that people were preserving. And then in 2015, this is the last time that we had the guide revised, so it's been over now 10 years. that this guide was revised, but still a really good source of information and content and recipes. Then in 2020 we had the pandemic, so we know that many folks were able to stay at home, and they had more time and resources. Not everybody, but some had more resources to grow their own gardens and start preserving food. And so we saw a peak in interest through the National Center on recipes and also information in general. How can I preserve this at home? And so keep in mind too, a lot of the food chain was disrupted back then in 2020. So there was a shortage in food. It was also more expensive because a lot of things were not able to ship anymore. So the demand was higher, but the offer was not as higher anymore. So there's a lot of factors that influence why people started to do home food preservation again. So we see again that spike in interest. And then last year we launched a national survey, consumer survey again, to understand longitudinal what has been going on since the 2005 survey. What are people doing in the United States regarding home food preservation? What type of foods they're preserving? What are their motivations behind preserving food? And how they want the information to be delivered. So that helps us in extension to understand, is the method that we are using to deliver the programs or the trainings effective or not? And so we learned a lot from this survey. We have a publication that is coming out hopefully soon. It has been submitted to a journal, but very interesting findings with this national survey. And then the future, the future is not including information here because the future, I don't believe the future is tomorrow. I believe the future is today. So collaboration is what I believe is the future. Too much. I don't know if I'm too far away from it. But anyways, the future is collaboration. The future is learning from each other. And food preservation is a lot of science, but it's also a lot of tradition and a lot of connection that brings people together. And so we cannot ignore either side. So how do we bring everybody together to account for tradition, account for cultural beliefs, connection, science, and also innovation that we are seeing in how that can affect ultimately public health. So before we start talking, I just want to go over this bacteria because it's the most important bacteria that we're going to be talking about today, and especially in food preservation. This is the bacteria that can cause the most severe illness, including death, if precautions are not taken. So Clostridium botulinum is the bacteria that produces a neurotoxin that can cause botulism. And botulism is a disease that is very, very serious. And so there's bacteria, usually they can come in different forms. They can be just, as I have here in the cycle, the vegetative cell. They're just live, they're just doing their own thing, they're surviving, they're growing, they're multiplying. And there's other bacteria that if they sense that the environment is changing, if something is, it's more acidic, or there's less water, or the temperature is dropping, they sense that something is changing, they need to protect themselves. So they create this spore. And so here you can see, let's see if it's gonna work here. They create this little spore that is basically a really hard shell that protects them from anything that is around them. And that way they can survive many, many years with no food, no water, no nothing. And when the conditions are right again, they can just, like a seed, they can come out of the shell and they can produce the toxin. And the toxin is really what makes us sick. So the bacteria itself doesn't make us sick, the spore doesn't make us sick, but the toxin makes us sick. And so this bacteria, it's found widely everywhere in the soil and water. I'm sure that we eat this bacteria probably very frequently, but it doesn't do anything to us because the bacteria itself doesn't cause disease. And so the spores alone doesn't cause disease, but the toxin does, and the toxin is what we want to avoid. The toxin is what we want to prevent from happening inside a canned jar. And so the spores, they require very specific conditions to come out of the spore, grow, and produce the toxin. And so they don't like oxygen. And guess what? The jars that we can food inside, once we are doing the process, the oxygen is exhausted from the jar out. When the jars are cooling, that vacuum is pulled down, and that is created, the seal is created, and there's vacuum inside the jar, so there is no or very minimal oxygen. This bacteria loves no oxygen, so it's an anaerobic bacteria. It likes a pH that is higher, like us humans. We don't like things that are acidic. Our pH of our body is close to neutrality. This bacteria, same thing. It likes when the pH is higher, so our low acid foods can be a problem. And room temperature. So all the conditions that we can think about when we have a jar that we have canned, now we're ready to put it away in our shelves. It's shelf stable, so if that jar was not processed appropriately, there is a potential for the spore to come out if it was present and produce the toxin. And so this toxin, if you have heard of Botox, the cosmetic treatment that people sometimes use for cosmetics, this is the same exact toxin, but the quantity is what makes it so different. So if you go to a doctor to do the medical treatment or a cosmetic treatment, they're going to apply very little amounts to, let's say, your face to reduce wrinkles, for example. In this case, this bacteria is producing that neurotoxin inside the jar, but in such great quantities that it can kill you. And so this bacteria, what it does, and it's one of the deadliest toxins in the world. So just to give you an idea, 1 gram can kill 1 million people. So it's a very, very deadly toxin. And it starts with usually your face. So you're going to have problems when you're blinking, with your speech, swallowing, and a lot of times it can be confused with a stroke or heart attack. The symptoms are very similar. So when people go to the hospital, and there's just a recent case that happened last year in California. They had canned cactus, and unfortunately they did not use a pressure canner, they used a boiling water canner, and it had the toxin inside. They had a family gathering of over 30 people, and 10 people ended up in the hospital. And the first patient that went to the hospital, they thought they had a stroke or they were having a heart attack. They did some medication, they're like, oh, you're fine, you can go home. They came back next day and they were worse, and they had to put them immediately on ICU and mechanical ventilation, because what happens, this toxin is a neurotoxin that paralyzes muscle. And that's why, for cosmetic purposes, the wrinkles, when you're blinking, they're not able to move anymore because it paralyzes your muscle. But imagine amount of toxin that you ingest when you're eating a contaminated food. It paralyzes everything. It's a descending paralysis. So it finally hits your lungs and the breathing movement, and you're expanding and contracting your lungs stop because of the toxin, and so you cannot breathe anymore. And that's usually how people die. And so it's a very, very serious toxin. And the worst thing is that you can't smell it, you can't see it, you can taste it. So you don't know if it's there. But the great news is that we have research and we have resources that if you do it properly, you can prevent this. This is all preventable. So I don't like to terrorize people about this toxin, but I also want to be very clear that there is a risk, and so you know the risk, and that's why you should follow the recipes as they were developed, because we don't want anybody to get sick. The good news too, there's antitoxins available, and they're usually available at major airports. Why? Because this disease it's rare compared to other diseases, and we're going to talk a little bit in relation to other diseases in the US, but those antitoxins are available at airports because as soon as the hospital identifies that somebody has botulism, they call the CDC and they call the local health department saying we have a botulism case. They contact the nearest airport that has antitoxin and they fly it right away. So you have to administer the antitoxin right away, because in 72 hours, you could potentially die. So it has to be really quick. It has to be a task force of multiple agencies working together and coordinating that effort to ensure that that person survives. And thankfully, through advances in medicine and mechanical ventilation, a lot of people that get botulism are surviving more than they were in the past when back then there was not as much available. There is some potential nerve damage, so physical therapy is often required, and that can be life-changing. So, ready to talk about that. So botulism is always an emergency, and usually the definition in food safety, we say that we have an outbreak when there's at least 2 people that got sick from the same food or the same drink that was contaminated. In the case of botulism, 1 person is enough to call an outbreak, and it's because it's so serious, and so it is always an emergency. So back then, more than 60% of the botulisms were fatal in the US, but thankfully, as I already mentioned, with research and advances in intensive supportive care, more people are surviving. So then I just want to take one step back and compare this disease to other diseases in the US, because we have around between 40 and 50 cases of botulism in the US every year. So how does it compare to other diseases, and should we be worried about this disease? Should we care and spend our time, research, and effort trying to do research and trying to share resources and educate the public on this?
Maybe it's my titanium legs.
Yeah, you're ready from.
I think the battery, I'll have to check the battery on that. Do they have a battery there?
Oh, it went too far. Too far. Let me see if I come close to it. Yeah, there you go. Can you all still hear me? Perfect. So, in the US, I just pulled the major top 4 pathogens that made the list. Last year, there was a publication that was published recently. You can see me. And so you're going to see that norovirus, Campylobacter, Salmonella, and Clostridium perfringens are the top 4 pathogens. And for us to make this comparison fair, we're going to exclude the first one, which is a virus. So we are talking about bacteria, so we're going to make a comparison between the other bacteria types. So ignore norovirus, which is number 1. The next one is Campylobacter. And if we look at this bacteria specifically, we see that we have 1.6 million cases of illness every year. And I just told you that botulism is about 40 to 50, right? 1.6 million versus 40 cases. Should we really spend our time with botulism? And so I want to take a step back and just show you that it's not the amount of illnesses that we need to compare directly, because that wouldn't be a fair comparison. It's how many people get the disease and how many people die. So the mortality ratio that we can calculate by how many people die from the disease and how many people get the disease, multiply by 100, and then we get a percentage of how many people die. And so for Campylobacter, I did the math. I saw how many people got the disease, 1.6 million, how many people died, multiply by 100, and we get 0.01%. So Campylobacter, you're very likely to survive. That's great. For botulism, 11%. It's really high. So this is the numbers that we should be looking at. How many people are dying from it? And we know that our major goal is to prevent people from dying, right? That's the main thing. We don't want people to get sick in the first place, but then dying would be the worst consequence from this, right? Now, the costs. So we love to talk about costs too. What does it cost for somebody that has Campylobacter to recover? Is $13,000, and this data was just published this year as well, which was great. I was waiting for this to get published from USDA ARS. And for botulism, $2.1 million to recover from botulism. And so think about how many months this person is going to spend at the ICU after they recover. Then they have to do physical therapy. There is a lot of time involved in this. And so not only how many people are dying, but also the costs involved are huge to the society. People are not being able to work and so forth. And so then, looking at the map in the United States and how many people, how many cases of botulism are coming from home canned foods, because we also have the industry, right, that are canning food, but then where is it coming from? Those 40, 50 cases, are they coming from the industry and then we don't have to worry about it, or are they coming from home? And then this is, where we come in as educators, helping people to understand the risks and do the right thing. So you look at this map here, the different colors, they show the amount of cases. And so you see Ohio had a lot, and Alaska.
But
and
we're
there's-
zero.
You're zero, so
Yeah,
kudos to you
because
guys.
of our
You're doing a great job. Yeah. And so there was total cases since 2015 in 19 states. 111 people got sick. Some got hospitalized. Majority got hospitalized. 12 died, and 9 food categories were involved when we looked at this, the outbreaks.
Can
And
I,
so,
before, can
yeah.
yeah, sorry. Two of the major factors that we're concerned with are pathogen, rat lung disease and leptospirosis. And so that's why our pH requirements are 4.2 instead of nationally 4.6. So where would those fit in your list of diseases?
So
Bacteria.
I don't know what are the numbers for those diseases. I actually don't know to compare to. In food preservation, if those were present, most pathogens, they die at 180 Fahrenheit. So the problem with this bacteria, with botulism, is this spore is extremely heat resistant. And so you can't boil it out. Like if you're boiling food, you can boil food for 10 hours. You're going to be killing all the other diseases, Salmonella, E. coli, all the other guys, leptospira, anything. But the spores, they're going to survive. And so that's another problem. But I wouldn't know the numbers for those to compare it. So then, when we look at what were the foods that were responsible for cases, and so we see that vegetables were responsible for nearly half of the illness. Seafood, soup, were also responsible for the majority of it. So all of those food categories, what they have in common, they are low acid foods, meaning that they are higher risk. If you don't process them using a pressure canner, you probably, if the spore was there, you might get sick. And so, yes?
What does the pressure canner do different than the water bath?
It's a great question. Thank you for that question. So the pressure canner, if the pressure doesn't destroy the spore, what destroys the spores is the higher temperature. And if we use pressure, we are able to bring the temperature of the water to 240, 250, while in a boiling water canner, we are just able to bring that temperature to 212, right? That's the max we're going to boil. And of course, there's like elevation considerations that we're going to see a little bit later. But let's say we are at sea level, 212, we're boiling it, and at 212, we're not able to destroy the spore. But at 240, in a pressure canner, we are. And so the pressure canner helps us to bring that temperature higher enough to destroy that spore. So, great question.
It's part of our class. You got to take the class.
There you go, plug for your class.
Very long day.
So then I was curious and interested to understand how does it compare with the total cases of botulism, and not just for home canning, but other cases that are reported too. So there's all of those are the outbreaks that we have seen with botulism, and so some of them are convenience stores, some are commercially prepared, some are illicit produced alcohol in prison. And so if you see the numbers, it's screwing all the numbers because it's 18 people. And so when you compare people, the home botulism cases with industry and also my other category here, you can see that we had 147 cases total when we combine everybody together, industry, prison, and homemade food. When we just look at home canned food, 75% of the foods preserved at home were responsible for the disease. So we know that the majority of botulism cases are coming from home canning. So this is, it's huge, it's great information for us to know that our our communities could benefit a lot from this information because we know that it's coming from the home. It's not coming from the industry. They have resources, they have the technology that they need to, and of course sometimes it happens as you see, but the majority of the problem is for people that are canning at home, and especially low acid foods. Yes?
Could you, I don't know if you know the answer, but the convenience store in California, the nachos and cheese, are we talking about like something ready-made that you go, let's say packaged? Are you talking about the packaged product or something that's fresh?
Prepackaged, yeah.
Cheese.
Yeah, the pump cheese, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. So now, any other questions about kind of the data that I shared? I'm just going to show you briefly some of the results that we got for our national survey and what people were doing at home. So this survey, we had a total of 54 questions, and it took about 15 minutes for folks to respond. We partnered with Qualtrics to get a representative number of people from each region in the US. And we got about 2,000 good survey responses that were usable. We had over 4,000 responses, but a lot of bots were responding to the survey, so we had to eliminate those because we know they're not real people. So that was a challenge, but we got about 2,000 people that actually responded and were real people. We asked about their preservation interests, we asked about what type of resources they need, where they access those resources, what are the current practices in canning. We also always hypothesized that food preservation had a role in food access and increasing accessibility to food, especially in those food desert areas, but we didn't have the data to really say, yes, this is it's causing an important effect in those communities. Some safety points, and then how can we engage with those folks in the future? Do they want us to reach out via classes, email, social media, letters on the mail, newspaper, radio? What do they want from us as extension? And I forgot to mention, this was an effort that we did with Montana State University. We first piloted this survey there in Montana, and then once we had cleaned it out and good information, then we did it nationally. So you can see that most of our demographics were females and about 27% males. We did age groups because we know canning, a lot of canning is generational, right? So it's passed by generation to generation. So we decided to categorize our data into age groups. And so you can see here, before 1946, Boomer, X, Millennials, and Z, Generation Z. And we stopped in 2006 because we needed people to be at least 18 years old to respond to the survey. So it's kind of broken down that way. This is the map that you can see by region. So this is according to Census Tract and the amount of people in each region. So we had more responses that were according to the population in some regions. So you can see here in the South region, we had more people respond because that's the highest population in the US is located in those states. So the people that responded to the survey, 48% lived in rural areas, 32 in suburban areas, and 18 in urban settings. And we asked what methods they were using to preserve food, and there was a variety of methods that they shared they were using. And so freezing and refrigerating, you can see here 24 and 26%, they came in high. So refrigeration and freezing is still a very popular way of preserving food, followed by drying, canning, and vacuum sealing. I thought that was interesting. I never really thought about vacuum sealing as a preservation method, but people are using that, and they're interesting how they are using. They're buying foods in bulk, and they are portioning it out so it lasts longer, so they go to bigger retailers like Sam's Club or Costco, buy it for cheap, and then portioning it out, vacuum sealing that so they can last longer. And then they had other preservation methods like fermenting, about 5%, and then curing and smoking and egg glassing came up a little bit, but not significant. We also asked them, yes?
What are your projections in terms of the types of canning in the future? Is that static or is that going to change?
I think it's increasing.
Which
Yeah.
is going to increase?
What type of canning?
Yeah.
So we didn't ask exactly between all the three methods of canning that we have, which ones people are doing most. But based on the responses and the motivations that folks have, and also the age groups, which is a younger generation that is canning, which was surprising because it kind of goes against to the classes that we see, at least in Georgia and Extension. But boiling water, steam canning are huge, and pressure canning, a lot of folks are a little afraid of pressure canning, but it's still, I think it's going to continue to increase, especially if we are able to do some of the efforts to decrease the initial cost of canning. And so I think the projection is to
Canning, you see canning is going to be increasing.
yeah, I think canning it's right. Since COVID, you can see people are doing a lot, and looking at, they come to classes and they learn how to maybe do a jam and jelly, or how to hot fill hold, or whatever the method we are using. The next thing you know, they are going into cottage foods, and they are adding value to their product, and they're selling it, especially farmers. So we have a grant in Georgia that we're helping rural farmers to add value to their crops. And so peanuts, jams and jellies, satuma is a big thing in Georgia. So helping them to bring that, leftover, or it doesn't look, perfect to the market. How can we turn that into add value and add more money to it? Yes.
What is egg glassing?
Egg glassing, basically you add, anybody else have heard about egg glassing before? Yeah, some of you. So basically you add they add calcium citrate to preserve the eggs in water. They close it, and that's it. So we don't have evidence to show that that's safe. Actually, this compound that is added can increase the pH even more and allow bacteria to grow. So at the National Center, we don't have any information or any research to say that it's safe to do it, but a lot of people do it. So they preserve eggs for months, even years, in a big glass. They put water and they put this calcium citrate, and to preserve the eggs.
So is that similar to like the 1,000-year-old egg? Is it a Chinese thing?
Huh?
I don't know.
No, it's like at bars in Ireland, you just go and they give you an egg out of a glass jar that's been sitting there for forever. And I survived.
It could, yeah.
Thanks to the whiskey.
Yeah.
We did have one. Raven, was that you? To made the eggs preserved.
Pickled duck eggs.
Oh, they were
That's
pickled.
pickle.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
that's different. Yeah,
Yeah,
we do
different.
have pickle eggs. That's
All I
good. That's
remember
good.
was the jar of eggs. So.
Yeah, pickle eggs are good, but egg glassing, and people use agricultural products, which they're not food grade, so they're not really meant for you to be eating it. It's for plants, but they don't realize there's a difference between using a food grade compound or the one that is made for agriculture. So we don't recommend this practice anyways, just because we don't have research. And I was talking to Mark yesterday about lawyers and liability, and a lot of it goes back to that. So if we don't have research to say it's safe,
We don't teach
we
it.
would not. Yeah, we don't teach it, exactly. So the first thing that people say, they want to stretch foods, they want to save money and stretch food dollars. So that makes sense with the price of food nowadays, right? It's a lot. It's very much still increasing. And so people want to stretch food dollars. They want to reduce food waste. And that's huge. We just work on a seafood broth stock with fish scraps for that exact reason, decrease food waste. People also wanted to know where their food comes from and what is in the food, so I can control how much sodium I'm adding, how much sugar I'm adding. I know the ingredients that are going in, and I think that's a big movement that we are seeing too, being part of the motivations behind why people are canning, and to your point, why it's still increasing, because it's a lot of work and in time and initial investment. And then the preferred taste or quality of that food product as well. Yes.
Don't they also do it just because they want to be more self-sufficient?
Exactly, yes. To extend, and I have one, I think after this, we asked about the food access, if that was something that they were, and 75% of people said yes. So yeah, So we also asked how many years of canning experience they had, and most people said that canning is brand new to them. Oops. Maybe. There you go. And I have extensive canning experiences, about 12%, and when we look at that, those are the older generations that have that extensive canning experience. So it makes sense. They have many years they have been doing this. And then when we ask what methods they were using for canning, and so according to USDA guidelines, we know that there's 3 methods that are safe, and those are, actually let me go back, those are boiling water canning, so basically a pot of water, you put the jars in, quiz,
They should know.
and you boil water, and that's the boiling water. And then we have steam canning. It's basically a dome-like equipment that you put water in the bottom, you put your rack, the jars on top, and you put the dome lid on top, and the steam that is generated from the bottom of this equipment is what is processing the jar. So steam canning, that's also approved, and pressure canning. And so those are the 3 methods that they're recognized by USDA as safe for home canning. Of course, there's some caveat what type of foods you are preserving with those methods, but those are the approved methods. So according to those approved methods, I kind of put here to see how many folks are using safe methods, and 62% are using safe methods. That's pretty good. I think we have come a long way. We still have work to do, but we have come a long way. And then about
Question, Carla?
yes.
What's the difference between open kettle and water bath?
Open kettle, it's basically you have your jar, you have your hot food, you put it in the jar, and you close it and you invert it. That's it. There's no really processing of that jar. Aspirin canning. Have you guys seen this before?
No.
I was really surprised. I had to actually ask folks to, what do you mean aspirin canning? So you know the pill, aspirin? They basically have the jar, they put a pill inside, close the jar, and call it a day. Put it in the shelf. Aspirin canning, it's supposed to do miracles. So, dry oven.
You don't hear about it because not a lot of people survive.
Exactly, that's a true point. That's a good hypothesis.
What's dry oven?
Dry oven, so basically you open your oven, turn it on, put dry food inside a jar. So let's say, I've seen this a lot with potatoes. They have a jar, they put just potatoes, no liquid, nothing. Close it, put it in the oven, and after a certain time they take it out, and that's it. And what happens, say, well, but my jar is sealed. Well, that doesn't mean anything. The jar sealing doesn't mean it's safe. So of course, because of the heat, the compound that is on that lid, it's going to expand and it's going to seal on top of your jar. So that's how it,
Not just
the seal
dry,
works.
I've seen them do it with jellies and pickles and everything. They just put it in the oven instead of boiling.
Instead of boiling it. Yeah, it's going to seal because there's heat in it. And sometimes...
I saw that on Instagram. It was like vegetables,
Yeah.
and then they put it upside down.
Yeah, don't
The
believe
inversion
anything
method.
on Instagram or Facebook rebel
Yeah, no, I
campers.
was like,
Yeah, there's some not so good information out there. We also were interested in knowing where the food, where they were procuring the food. And so grocery store or market through in-store or bulk order, so they could buy more for less price and can. That was the major one. My home garden, so a lot of people are still gardening and getting their produce from home. A local producer or farmers market, so we know farmers market play a huge role in communities' sustainability, so that was something that came up too. And then we also asked what were the canned products that they canned in 2023, and so fruits were 81%, tomatoes 73%, jams and jellies 70%, cucumbers and pickles 66%. And we ask in any of those categories if they were canning between 1 and 12 and so forth pints. And we have more specific data how much they were canning, but the results that I'm showing here, this is all combined. I have not stratified by category of how many pints they were canning, but rather in general. So we have a publication coming out soon that has very specific results on demographics, income, ethnicity, rurality, that kind of tells the story a little bit better on why people were doing it and what they are
It'll be
doing.
available online or
Online, yes, and it's free. It's a open source journal, so you don't have to pay to access it. Yeah. Vegetables, 81%. Soups or mixtures, 59. Meat and poultry, and seafood and fish, and again the same type of categories. When we ask what were the 5 trusted sources of information, family and friends came to the top, which is not surprising, right? But it really tells us as educators that those are the folks that are going to be sharing with their family and friends, and how can we make information available to them so they are the branch that continue to share this information beyond the university, beyond extension, beyond different organizations. Social medias came next, 16%.
but that's a dangerous one.
That can be dangerous. Yes, I agree with you. Internet or web page not included in social media came next. Magazine and newspaper, still a big thing. And then manufacturer provided recipes. For example, the pectin manufacturers, they have the recipe behind the box, or the jar manufacturers, sometimes they provide recipes as well. So people still use those.
So where was the university extension on that list?
Thanks, Mark. It feels like I just planted you for this question. Ta-da! Very at the bottom, 3%. It was kind of sad to see that. Thanks for asking that question. Right timing.
How about State Department?
So, not much. People still don't recognize extension and certain agencies as the trusted resources, which means we have still a lot of work to do. So job security for us, but kind of sad to see that.
Seems like that needs to go into education, public schools. Not
Yeah.
many people even know that it's a resource.
That is a resource, I agree.
So,
They joke that,
You didn't even teach home economics.
yeah.
no, but it could be put in there somewhere into the program, or at least, have.
4-H partner with,
on the wall for
yeah.
kids to see.
Yeah. 4-H plays a huge role in delivering it in school, and we have
That's not
some
on the
huge
chart either,
programs.
though.
Sorry?
They didn't learn it at 4-H.
But they will next year here.
Oh,
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
It seems fairly clear just looking at that you need a social media presence.
We do. We do a
Yeah.
social media presence, and I'm going to show you a little bit later. It's a funny story too, because people were telling me you need to be in Twitter, old Twitter X, and I'm going to tell you the story a little bit later. But we have some data to inform us which platform we need to be and what we need to, when we need to do that. But unfortunately, you're going to see later too. The center, people think that the center has a huge building and we have a lot of people working, and it's many labs, and it's really not. We are a website, and the University of Georgia believes in the center. We have not had funding since 2014, so we are basically just doing what we can with the resources that the university is providing to us. And so,
What is that phrase? Welcome to extension?
welcome to extension, exactly. So. The question that we had about increasing food access and being more sustainable. So we said, we had a statement and we asked people to rate that. Canning food at home would increase my household access to food throughout the year. And about 75% of people said either they agree or strongly agree. So we know that food preservation has a huge role on food access, which we didn't really have official data on. And we always heard from communities and from collaborators, but never really had collected that data. And so before I go into what type of food they were canning, I just want to kind of do a review on the methods that we have and which methods are used with what types of food. And so,
It must be the better. Wait, if you get up really
Close,
it
then it
works?
does.
4.2 in white.
So 4.6, it's the pH of this bacteria that it's kind of like a divider. Below 4.6, equal 4.6 or below, this bacteria will not survive. The spore will not grow. So we know that if we are below this threshold, this bacteria is going to be quiet. It's not going to do anything. Of course, we have other things that could grow: Salmonella, E. coli, Listeria, Staph, other things that we need to be concerned about. But This daily bacteria, we do not have to be too concerned about if we are below this threshold. Above 4.6, this bacteria is able to come out of the spore, produce a toxin, and cause disease. And so 4.6 is not a magic number, it's just the number that the bacteria either grows or it doesn't grow. And for safety purpose, what Ken is saying, we don't use exactly 4.6 because when we test recipes at home, can you imagine people at home, they do all sort of things. I'm not gonna follow this exactly as it is, or I'm gonna add this, my spin to this recipe, or what this, or what. So we need to account for the worst case scenario. Of course we cannot try to imagine everything that people are gonna do at home, but we need to build a safety margin that if people decide to do something at home, hopefully they will be safe because we accounted for that. So the pH that we are looking for, usually when we do validate recipes, is 4.2 for acidify or acid foods. Of course, low acid, then it's a different game, but to your point, Ken, that's the same pH that we go about. Yes?
So for the home kitchen, how do you know you're at 4.2?
You really don't.
And just following the exact recipe is a problem, but
Yeah.
we should be able to measure 4.2. There should be some.
By a meter.
So
Yeah, that's why I'm getting to this.
the problem with a pH meter is that there's a lot of pH meters available online, but they are not really scientific. So the ones that you can find online, there is also, you have to calibrate it, you have to have the buffers, different buffers that you have to do the
That's
calibration.
not gonna happen at home kitchen.
Exactly. So we don't expect consumers at home to do that. So that's why we have the recipes and we have safety margin built in so that they follow the recipes, they don't have to worry about that. The only product that we ask people to measure the pH with a pH test strip is kombucha. Because it's liquid, there is not a lot of technique involved, if you will. Because if you have solids and liquids mixed together, you have to use a very specific methodology to measure the pH of the solid separately, of the liquid separately, then a mixture of both. And there's a lot of steps involved and a lot of training required. So we don't expect people at home having the training, having the equipment, and maintaining the equipment at home.
Technology is not gonna help us get to that point.
I don't think it will, because lab equipment, it's very methodological in the sense that it has to be calibrated, and somebody that is using that equipment, one, to have access to it. I mean, I don't think anybody at home would buy a $5,000 pH meter.
No,
That's-
but if we're producing, and if we go up from here to the Maui Food Innovation Center, where they do have a 5,000 pH meter, that's gonna help us provide stabilized value-added products. So we're looking at what we do here a little bit different from what you are. That we want to take on-farm products, produce safe value-added products that are marketed commercially.
Yeah.
So it's not just for
Regional
home
labs
use.
will do it then.
Yeah, so you could
Yeah,
test it in
regional
those
test.
labs and then provide the recipes to your community, for sure. Yeah, I think that's the way to go. Because expecting
Here's your
people at
funding,
home.
Sharon. We want that.
Yes, Jane.
So, for those of us, and as I said, I met a lot of the alumni that are here. With the new regulations of the cottage food industry, you still have to meet the standard of 4.2 or water activity of less than 0.88. Water activity meter is actually even more expensive than a pH meter or
Right.
litmus paper or pH paper. I mean, it's a vehicle for at least us just for here in Hawaii, specifically to start with food safe, shelf stable. That was not introduced before. And now that we have it as part of the regulation, then we can be assured essentially for those of us who have taken the class or at least the education to know that whatever product we're buying it because it's now written as legislation, that people selling at the farmer's market have a better assurance that they are making the product as a food safe product because they have to go through the pH. Now, there's a lot of variables that are in there, but because there is a standard now, there wasn't a standard before. I mean, I won't say who, but we see people selling ferments at the farmer's market, and they're not refrigerating, which they need to be. So we've had these things bubbling in cans at the farmer's market, and you know our weather, it's hot. Don't laugh, it's still, it's happening now, and so those are, now that we have a little bit more standards that are in there. So while, the market foolproof. And if you're gonna go commercial, then fine, you can take it to the lab. But for those of us in the home, at least for the cottage food industry, when we're talking about commercial, hopefully we'll hear from PTA to understand what commercial really means. I mean, I'm producing no more than, 100 of my sampler packs, maybe 2 cases of the jam and jelly, and then there's only 48 jars. But, going commercial really needs hundreds. I'm not at that point, nor will I ever get to that point. But that's my choice.
I have one comment and one question. I just want people to be aware, as Jane is saying, the new homemade food rules have the pH and water activity requirement. However, the actual producer is not required to turn those into anyone, and they can test on their own at home. So that's a little tricky. So my name's Anthony.
Hi, Anthony.
I'm running a grant-funded program through Hawaii County called Hawaii Commercial Kitchens, and it provides free technical assistance to any food businesses, and that now includes pH and water activity testing through Waimea Food and Water Testing and Nina Tanabe here at HEWO. And my question is there botulism in here? And if not, what is that?
I really can't tell.
Taste it.
Yeah.
Tell us.
It looks like you have some mold growing. Mold is the only thing visually that you can see because it produces spores. So there's some white spores here. I wouldn't be able to tell you what type of mold it is, but bacteria, there's no way I can tell you. I wish I had a microscope in my eye that I'm like, yes, that would be so helpful, but what is this?
It's
What was it?
high pressure canned
Butter miso chicken.
Oh my.
Yeah, from a master food preserver class.
Yeah.
That's
It looks
3
like there's
years
some
old
mold
already.
growing there.
It's like 18 months. It wasn't stored properly. I keep it on my desk for demonstration purposes.
So if you have
Supposed to say,
mold,
hi, I'm Anthony. I'm a canning addict.
Well, there's no pressure, yeah, there's no, lovely, but there's no pressure on it.
if you have any signs of mold or yeast growing, that means your process was not effective, because if they are really not heat sensitive at all. If they are able to grow and survive, spores are there for sure. If they're present, they are still there for sure. So if you have any signs of mold or yeast or bubbling in your pressure can goods, do not even try, discard it.
So-
because it's not worth it. When
I'll
in doubt,
taste it if you want.
So you're saying that it must not have been pressure canned correctly?
properly. Or the seal, when it was, as soon as you remove from the pressure canner, you're supposed to leave the jar sit for at least 12 hours undisturbed. Sometimes people are impatient and they move them around, and so you can disturb the seal of that. And so if the seal did not form properly, now you have small amounts of space that we have mold and stuff in the air all the time, right? So they can get in and start growing. So it could be that it was not processed properly, or the seal was disturbed, and now after it was canned, it got recontaminated.
Carla,
Yes.
with a jar like that, it looks like the head space is too high.
Yeah.
I mean, that in itself,
No.
even if you canned it properly, that's too much head space.
That's too much, yeah, I agree. There was a lot of liquid loss, siphoning. I don't know what happened to that, but yeah, it is not. Yeah, you're right. The head
that's a fail.
space is. That's like, it's a good start, but maybe try again.
I didn't have the, I did not have that problem.
Can I, sorry.
No,
Carla?
thanks, yeah.
Yes.
I just want to answer Anthony, and sorry, because this applies specifically to Hawaii. You're absolutely right, the onus is on the producer to keep a log of the pH and what you're producing. And if you look at the food code, you are subject to inspection at any time by the Department of Health. It's not just food establishments. A home food, cottage industry is not a food establishment. But you look at the laws in there, and I've combed through every single page of that. And it does say that the Department of Health can come to your home to inspect it, unannounced. Unannounced, because you are vending now outside. So you gotta look at keeping your log for pH system, keeping your log for water activity if you're doing it regularly. And that is all on you. Administratively, specifically, the Department of Health has said, we are not going to administer that. That's something that you will have to do, and you need to be aware that somebody, an inspector could, will they ever? Probably not, but they could. They're probably gonna do wicked lending, and I've had that done as well too. So there are still rules that you have to follow. One of the things that I started to do on mine, especially if I have liquids or whatever, I would state the pH on there. So that I know that it was 10 at that pH. Most of my things are dry though, by the way. I should be more activity, I won't state the more activity on that one. That's a little harder to do. But anyway, just an extra to that too.
Thanks for sharing, Jane. Yeah, it's very helpful, and thanks for sharing too. If people need those services, you're one resource. And usually cottage foods, those foods that are, and I know vary by state, but they are supposed to be low risk foods. So your jams and jellies, bread, candy, dehydrated. Those are the foods that you're going to be seeing as approved foods for cottage foods. Some states do provide, they allow for acidified or even low acid, which I think is a stretch, but each state's a little bit differently. And so I don't know here what are the foods that are approved under cottage foods, but for your jams and jellies, if you're measuring the pH and the water activity, I mean, I know 0 people that got sick from jams and jellies. Like, I'm not concerned about jams and jellies really at all. It's a very low risk product. So where I kind of start getting, or at least start questioning or pay more attention to, is the acidified food, so salsa, that you are adding acid, that the ratio needs to be exact, or the low acid foods that you're processing in a pressure canner. So those are the higher risk foods that could cause more trouble than. You had a question?
So we talked, I mentioned that question about liability and insurance, and that's often a requirement that anybody selling something at a farmer's market, it needs to have commercial liability. So have you had any communication with the insurance industry with regard to commercial liability and any feedback coming from that side?
So I had from my lab, trying to figure out, because the first thing when I started doing this research, they told me don't do it because it's too risky. But I think that if we at the university don't do it, who is going to do it, right? Who is going to develop new recipes? So then you need to have insurance. Insurance for a lab is about $1,000 a month. I don't even have money for research, so I cannot pay insurance. So what we are doing is we have a advisory board for the center that we have process authorities. I don't know if you have heard this term before, but a process authority is somebody that has the knowledge and expertise to validate and to provide technical expertise in thermal processing, meaning what is the time and temperature combination that is required to certain foods to destroy spores of Clostridium botulinum. And so that's going to be the most dangerous pathogen that we have. If we kill the spores of CBOT, everybody else in the list down below is already dead. And so we always go for the worst case scenario. So it could be a multi-hurdle technology. It could be that we are controlling for the pH, we are controlling the water activity, we are controlling with the temperature, we are controlling with acids that we add or other preservatives. And so a process authority is somebody that has extensive knowledge and expertise to provide recommendations in this area. So we have many process authorities that are part of the center. And so when we are developing a recipe, we have the recipe developed, we have the data collected, and I'm going to show you in a little bit how we do that. And it goes through multiple process authorities to look to this data to make sure that it is safe, to make sure that because we are individually one person and we are seeing one thing, but maybe we are missing something. And so multiple eyes on the same thing. That's what we're trying to do, because we don't have the insurance. And so, yes.
So you're sending the data to the process authority, not a recipe?
Both, yeah. The data and the recipe, yeah. And so when we have the recipe, we can do modeling. And so we already have data that we collected for many different recipes. And so we know that what are the critical parameters we are including in that testing. So maybe it's viscosity, maybe is solids to liquids ratio, maybe is the acidity. When we're developing the recipe, we know what is that critical parameter or critical parameters. Once we have those defined, then we can do some modeling around that with the data that we already have and say, okay, we can predict that this recipe or we are going to be able to decrease as many, I don't know, 99.9% of the spores in 1 trillion jars or whatever that math looks like. So there's different calculations, there are different models that we can use to calculate and to say, yes, this is safe or no, this is not safe. And there is always the margin that we add on top of that because people at home get very creative and they might change something. And even though we say, please do not change anything, that still happens sometimes. And so we try to account for things. I can talk forever, and I'm looking at the time. I have 30 minutes left. We're good.
Go for it.
I want to make sure that we have enough time to look at the recipe development and some of that too. But this is basically kind of summary of what, just to show you. So below or equal to 4.6, all acid foods or acidified foods, so your salsa, your tomatoes, they belong in this category. You can use a boiling water process or a atmospheric or steam canning process. Those are safe. There's a caveat with steam processing. The process can only be 45 minutes because otherwise you run your canner dry and you're not like you can open it and put more water because then the steamscape you have to start over. So there are some notes with this, but still you can use both methods. And then for anything above 4.6, you have to use a pressure canning process. Otherwise, you won't be able to reach that high temperature, and you won't be able to destroy the spore. So now, with that in mind, so keep in mind, our acid foods and our acidified foods, we can use pressure. I mean, we can use boiling water, and we can use atmospheric steam process. We could also use pressure canning. We could pressure can tomatoes. We could pressure can fruits that are high in acid. But that probably wouldn't be very smart because that would turn into mush because the pressure is too harsh in those products, and so we don't want to do that. Anything low acid, so seafood, meat, vegetables, certain foods that don't have enough acid, they have to be processed in using a pressure process. And so now,
we don't recommend that type of high pressure canner. We stick with All American because in this environment in Hawaii, the seals will last a month.
Really?
And disintegrate. So
that's good to know.
Metal to metal.
Metal to
Now
metal.
they sell the Presto canners here.
Yeah.
But they just do not last at all.
So the seals don't last on the jars?
No, the jars are fine. It's just the rubber ring and the
I
rubber
see, and the
gasket
canner
on it.
itself.
The canner itself.
Interesting. Have you talked to?
So how do you know if you're up to pressure then?
So
Well, it's got the gauge on it.
there's the gauge, and there's some canners that have the weighted gauge, and there's 5, 10, and 15. They're going in 5 increments, and some canners have both. This example here only has a dial gauge, and it goes up, and you're supposed to test that annually to make sure your gauge is not off. If it's off, you have to replace it, or you have to adjust your pressure.
Used to be in the Midwest, you could take it into any hardware store and they would be able to do it. Used to, yeah. So now you have to send it back to Wisconsin if it's the ones we use, the All American.
We offer this service and extension. You could offer this here too. Really.
If we had an extension.
issue.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Somebody else's.
In the instructions with the Presto, it says to go to extension. Remember I asked you that
Yeah.
question?
Yep.
So
Yeah,
they,
but
It doesn't really happen.
our
We have-
extension P, what's a pressure canner? What's that? Yeah, well, ask our extension link.
so we have forms, if any of you is interested, we have forms and we have training on how to calibrate those, if you're interested. In Georgia, we offer the service for no cost. So if people come to the extension office, they want their dial gauge to be tested, that's a free service that we offer, and it doesn't take much, like maybe 10 minutes, that's it. Okay, so we ask about what type of methods people would use if they were canning vegetables. So vegetables are low acid foods. They should be using pressure canning only, that's it. Now you're gonna see what they were using. And I kind of put the line here so you can see that above the blue line is what would be considered safe. Everything below the blue line, not safe. So there's a lot of folks using boiling water canning or steam canning or other methods to can vegetables. And so those would be risky practice because they would not be able to, with those methods here, you would not be able to destroy the spores.
We have two problems here, is that people refuse to believe that on
Mhm.
one of the other islands, and I'm tired of arguing with them, and eventually they'll wind up arrested or sued for something. And trying to tell a 85-year-old tutu she can't use used baby food jars to make jelly to sell at farmers markets is kind of difficult here at times. So it's
Some challenges. No,
yeah,
I.
there's some of our challenges.
What if the person is storing their canned items in the refrigerator?
That would be fine. Yeah, then they could use any of the methods. I mean,
Room
not any of the
temperature
methods.
storage
but
is where the real danger is.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Storage in refrigerator, not so bad.
Not so bad. But then why would you go through all this time, effort, money to can something and then store in the fridge? Just put it in the fridge to begin with, right? I don't know, if I'm canning at home, I want it to be shelf stable and I want to be able to put it away and not use the space in my refrigerator. I don't know. Yeah. When we ask about meat and poultry, so again, low acid food products, again, only pressure canning. You see, oops. Only 12% were using pressure canning. Everybody else, but there's a lot of people that weren't sure. And you're going to see, as we continue to look at other food categories, there's more uncertainty of what to use. So people don't really know what to use. And so it's great for us to be able to share, this is the methods that you can use, and if you follow those steps, you should be safe and avoid botulism. Seafood and fish, again, a low acid food product, and only 10% were canning using canning using pressure canning. Everybody else was using something else, and a lot of people weren't sure, so this number is increasing. And so I don't know if you remember in the map that I had, Alaska had a lot of, most of the foodborne botulism cases were from Alaska, and they can a lot of fish and seal and oil. And so we see some of that because fish and seal oil, it's a low acid product, and they use something else instead of pressure canning. Fruit and fruit products, so this is great. Most people are using, so they could choose from any of those three, they would still be safe. I wouldn't can my fruit products in a pressure canner just because that would turn into mush. The quality would be terrible. You would be safe, but you probably wouldn't enjoy that much. And then boiling water canning and steam canning were also good methods. Then now the third topic that I just wanted to bring is creativity and innovation. And food preservation, especially canning, has been around forever. 1858 is when the mason jar was patented, right? So it has been around forever, but there's new equipment, and there's more equipment that come out every year that we have time to test or to look into. So in 2020, when there was a shortage in jars, there was a shortage in many different supplies, you could see new lids coming off the market, new jars coming off the market, and people complaining, my jars are breaking more, it's not sealing as good, what brand can I use, and so forth. Or this new vacuum sealer, I don't know if you have seen that, you put on top of the jar, sucks the air out, and you're done. It's quite scary because if you look online, there's pictures that you can use that with perishable foods, low acid foods, and there's no processing really recommended. It's like this is a disservice to the community, leading people that they can do this, and in reality they could be actually harming themselves. So there's a lot of innovation, especially after COVID, when things were not available, and a lot of people saw it as an opportunity to create new products. There's also improvement with crop genetics, and so there's some unintended consequences with pH. So in the past, tomatoes, for example, they were an acid product, right, an acid fruit. Now we recommend adding acid to all tomato recipes because
it's one of our points of contention here with Department of Health is that what constitutes that? Can't we just go by the pH and have it, some sort of baseline established?
Yeah, if you could.
They don't want to commit one way or the other, so we're left in this kind boy, but when I learned this, like I told you back in the 50s, the pH was 3.5.
Yeah.
And so as the meters changed and things progressed and the science improved, you know, all of a sudden I got back into it and trained in California, and it's like, what do you mean 4.6?
Yeah, it's a tomato.
It
It's
should be
supposed to
3.5,
be
yeah.
acid. Yeah, it's a wide range. So because there are some varieties that are more acidic, so you
Yeah.
didn't have to necessarily add
Aerial
acid, but
movement too has changed a lot of that. Not just tomatoes, but
Yeah.
potatoes and tubers.
yeah, some Asian pears,
Yeah.
white peaches. There's a lot of varieties that, if we don't have the research anymore, we had back in the day, but we need to do more research. So we remove some of the recipes retracted from the book because we don't know if it's safe anymore because the pH has increased. Oops. And then of course some consumer behavior change. You know, sugar. How much sugar you're adding, how much sodium you're adding. Can you leave that? Is that a safety factor? So in fermented foods, salt is a critical factor to control for certain pathogens. And so they need that salt to select for certain strains of bacteria that are going to do the fermentation kind of in a succession way. But in canning, if you're canning green beans and you want to leave off the salt, you can completely omit the salt. You don't have to put salt. So certain recipes, it's there for safety. Other recipes are there for just flavor. So if you want to remove it, you can totally remove it. But knowing when to do that so you're not getting in trouble with
Isn't that road supposed to also be long and winding?
Sorry?
The road, the picture?
Oh.
Supposed to be long and winding?
And yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is supposed to.
Long and winding.
It is.
Around Mount Hood, huh?
And then use of AI to develop recipes. That has been very, very challenging. We have gotten a lot of questions of folks using AI, and that's why I created this robot here. There's so much science that goes behind developing a recipe, and when it's ready and good to use, it's hard to even envision how much work was put into that recipe. And so going to AI, let's say bacon and shrimp, I think are the two main ones that we get all the time. They send me recipes. Oh, I got this recipe from AI to can bacon. And it looks really legit. It looks that, this could be real. And then you start reading and paying more attention to the details, like, they're missing this, they're missing this, they're missing this. And so it's dangerous enough that somebody could believe and try to do it at home without knowing that there is no approved, there is no tested recipe for canning bacon. There's just, this is not a thing. So how do we use AI? It's not gonna go away, it's here. And so how can we incorporate AI in our education and actually maybe develop prompts on how do you ask a question to AI if you are canning in your kitchen and you need an answer at that moment. What are the things that you can ask AI that can be helpful, and how to recognize when the information is trusted and when it is not? And so there's a lot of information out there, but I think there is a lot of work and opportunities with AI in food preservation. And then a variety of methods of canning, that aspirin oven canning, sous vide, washing machine, that's another one. People are trying to can in a washer machine. It's really interesting. People are creative. I'm like, you've tried that? It didn't work?
Jane dehydrates in the dryer.
I tried canning hides in a washing machine. I destroyed the washing machine.
Okay, so now the final part of it, just want to share a little bit about the National Center. So it was established, as I mentioned earlier, in 2000 with different universities being part of it. Dr. Elizabeth Andrews was the founder of the center. She was at UGA for about 30 years, I want to say. She retired in 2020, and then Dr. Tracy Bergman, she was supposed to be here, but she couldn't come. She helps me. She's the associate director, and she was the interim director until 2021 when they hired me, and she still provides support and helps with some of the efforts that we have. The research, funding for research ended in 2014, so that has been left us in a pickle, literally, because we want to provide more recipes, we want to test more recipes, but it takes a lot of time and energy and effort to do that. So Since then, we have been able to test a kombucha recipe, a kimchi recipe, and a seafood stock recipe in the lab, and doing all the validation for that. And I'm going to show you in a little bit what some of the equipment that we are using. We're also doing some research with freeze drying, now being available to people at home at a lower cost. Lower cost for $1,000 is a lot of money, but many people are buying it. So doing some research with freeze drying to see how different bacteria can survive the freeze drying process. We actually use freeze drying to preserve bacteria in my lab. So we know that freeze drying is not killing anything. So what can we do as far as pre-treatment or post-treatment after that method is used? So this is our team. So Dr. Tracy Bergman, Associate Director. Chris Ingmanson is our food safety coordinator. She helps with all the extension and lab organization. Then I have 2 PhD students and 1 master's student. This PhD student here is working with freeze drying jerky, because jerky is a raw meat product, and we know that freeze drying doesn't do anything. It actually helps to preserve the bacteria. So what can we do to make jerky safe if we choose to do freeze drying? A lot of people are using freeze dried jerky because it's high in protein like meat, low weight, so for camping or for hiking, and they make broth. So you have the jerky, and it's very dry, and so you put in water, shake it up, and you have kind of like a broth, jerky broth, whatever, high in protein, low in weight, that you can carry when you hike, or for emergency preparedness as well. So there's a lot of different
The
motivations.
water activity on something freeze-dried gotta be really low.
It's like
That's
0.01.
still a concern.
So the bacteria, they are there, they don't die, but they stay in this kind of pause metabolism, where they are there, they're not dead, but they're not multiplying, they're not growing. The minute that you rehydrate that product, put water into it, and you leave it for more than 2
Then you got a
hours.
petri dish, yeah.
Exactly. And so,
Keep it dry, you're fine. Then once
if you
then
eat it
need
dry-
eat it right away.
yeah, then you're fine.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but if you are hiking and you decided to put that into water and you don't eat it right away, and you're hiking, and next day you decide you might get some trouble in your hike or whatever the situation. But yeah, the water activity is extremely low. They're not growing, they're not doing anything. But if you rehydrate and you don't take the appropriate
Then
measures,
you're starting all over again. You
Yeah.
just contaminated everything.
Exactly.
Nobody's got names?
I was just mentioning their names.
Oh,
Yes.
sorry, I missed it.
Yeah. No. Dr. Tracy Bergman, Chris Ingmanson.
Yeah,
This
she
is
was
Malika Mahida.
apologized for not being able to come.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if you knew, but she broke her hand like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, playing tennis. So I think it was, it didn't work for her to come before then, but I think even now it's like she's probably thankful that she hadn't committed to this. This is Sitara Kulanen, another PhD student that I have. She's working with food access, the intersection of food access and food safety, looking at different demographics in Georgia and how different food safety risks are present or not in different demographics in the region. So looking at retailers and foods that are available to folks to purchase. So what type of, if we have coliforms or E. coli or salmonella present in those different regions. And then this is my master's student, Lauren Suter. She is actually graduating next year. She just finished her project, and she was looking at home sonicators or ultrasounds. That's another trendy equipment. As I told you, there's a lot of equipment out there, and people were using to clean leafy greens, and with the promise that it would destroy and kill all the bacteria. So you just put that sonicator or that ultrasound inside a bowl with water and your salad, and you're good to go. And the data that I was looking from her study actually doesn't show that it does anything. So don't waste your money. So we still have to analyze the data, but there's just so many things out there. Yes.
Anybody tried any UV stuff?
There is some commercial UV, but at home I haven't seen anything. Yeah.
And here they're pushing hyperbaric.
Yeah.
I knew you were going to say, I can read your mind not even looking at you. We work together too long.
Too much.
So how about hyperbaric?
I haven't seen it at home either, but commercially, yes. Yeah.
What do you think of it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Tomorrow, but.
Yeah, I honestly don't know on top of my head what is the average destruction for different pathogens. So
Yeah.
if I would say anything, I would be lying to you because I don't know. The reach that we have with the National Center, it's all over the world. So you can see, of course, U.S. In Canada are the most countries that we use that use the information. We have about 160,000 people coming to the center every month, and United States #1, Canada, United Kingdom, and then Australia and Philippines are the ones using the information in our website. And when we look at what were the pages that people most accessed, it was how do I can. So canning is even though we have different preservation methods in the website, canning is the #1. So canning fruits, the USDA guidelines, canning tomatoes, vegetables, and so forth. So now just zooming in into the United States, you can see that just in 1 year period, we have a total of 560,000 new users, or total users, and 553 new users. And we can track with the IP address that people come and use the website. We can also look at what pages they went, how many time they spent, they don't download something, are they returning to that page. And then before we have the new website, we have about 9,000 pages on our website. We were curious to see if people were using the information from their computer, from their phone, from their tablet, or what was the device. And that was really interesting because most people were using from their phone. And before the website was updated, our pages were not mobile friendly. So you can imagine how terrible that was. But thankfully now it is, and so people can see it properly on their phone. Social media. So when I started this position, many people came and they said, you need to be on Twitter, you need to be on X, because that's where your clientele is. I said, well, I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing, right? So this is too much. I can't be on social media and not be responsive, because we don't want to have an account and not be able to engage with people and respond to their comments. So if we cannot do that, then we're going to wait until we have the resources to do that. But we started collecting data and we looked to see where our consumers were coming from. And so majority of them are coming from organic search. So if they put in the platform, canning tomatoes, the National Center will come up, they will click and they will go. So direct organic search. And then social media, only 9.6% were coming from social media because somebody commented or added a link from our website or whatnot. And then when we zoom in into this 9.6% piece of the pie here, you can see that Facebook is our #1 platform. And if you look, Twitter is the bottom. So I'm glad I did not start a Twitter account, because that would not be time well spent. X, X. But Facebook, YouTube, Blogger, recipes, Reddit, and so forth. You can see where the platforms that we are. So
when was that done, and how is that going to change?
sorry.
When was that done, and how?
This was the last year. So
Just
where?
until this month.
Yeah. So the last year's worth of data.
So how is that going to change? Maybe not.
Like change in what sense?
Where people gather their.
Oh yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. I don't know if it's going to continue to be Facebook
When organic
or.
search
We'll
by
invite her
far
back
is the
next year.
biggest one. So people are
Yeah.
Googling it, and they got a question, they're Googling it.
Yeah.
But it's old people looking stuff up on Facebook.
Eh? Eh?
Yeah.
Older people like us.
And Facebook has a lot of canning communities, and so a lot of people.
Some good, some horrid.
Some.
Oh, that's like us.
Yeah. Some
No,
questionable.
we have 84,000 members on the Hawaii Tropical Fruit Growers Facebook page,
That's
right?
very
Only
impressive.
62,000 are from India, but the rest are.
That's your fault. That's your fault.
I'm all inclusive.
So with the National Center, we have an advisory committee that is part. We have one representative from each region in the U.S.